What was it about that kind of motivated you to ask Henry, like, can I do this? Was there some sort of a connection and resonance that you felt with that line and that scenes?
I was involved with a church, and I was going through this. I went through a program trying to change my sexuality, trying to be straight and go from gay to straight. That was back in 1990. So I was trying to do a similar thing. I was trying to be something I wasn't, but I really wanted to. I really put everything into it. But after that program, I realized, no, I'm going to embrace who I am. But I had to go through that whole thing, just like Jack. I had to go through this whole thing to make sure that just to prove to myself that basically it was okay. It was okay to be gay. It was okay to embrace it and to move on from there. That's why when I read that, I just thought, this is where I'm at in my life, or I was in my life. Or yeah, I definitely connected with Jack on that level.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Kingdom of Dreams podcast, The Making of Stories. I'm your host, Jawad Mir. Today, my guest is stop motion animator Anthony Scott, who worked on the 1993 hit film, no, not Jurassic Park, The Nightmare Before Christmas, widely known as Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas, but it's actually directed by Henry Selick, who is responsible for James and the Giant Peach and Caroline. Anthony and I had a great conversation about the technicalities of the film, about the scene that he worked on, about working with Henry, as well as his personal journey and some of the past stories that he shared about his life and how it was connected to Nightmare Before Christmas. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And also, this is the last episode of 2025. I wish everyone happy holidays, a great new year, and thank you for supporting. And I hope you guys continue to support Kingdom of Dreams podcast. Thank you. Lovely to see you again. I know we met last month, or was it the month before that? I can't
It
remember.
was in October in Pasadena
You're right, yes. And great
at
to see you
Lightbox.
again. Yeah, and you
You
were
too.
obviously at the panel with Carlos and for the Corpse's Bride, so that was really cool to witness. It was very fun to watch that.
Yeah, yeah, that was a blast to see Carlos and Ian again. It's been a long time. So, and to see the puppet Ian brought the actual puppet with him. I hadn't seen one of those in a long, long time.
That's awesome. Listen, I remember watching Nightmare Before Christmas when it first came out, and I can't believe it's been 33 years almost. No, 29 years. Is
30,
it?
I think
30,
you're right.
33,
32.
33,
Yeah,
33,
33.
93.
It
And
came out in
I,
93. Yeah.
so it came just before, I think a year before Lion King and Toy Story, maybe 2 years before. Around that time, Beauty and the Beast and all that
Yeah.
fun stuff, and the animation world was sort of taking a shift completely. And I enjoyed it then, and I very much enjoyed it this morning when I watched it after a long time. What a
Nice.
great piece of cinema, and way ahead of its time, even today, I think in some degree. Tim Burton producing it and you guys working on it. So just wanted to extend that first of all uh, to begin the conversation with.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Tell me about your involvement in the film. What was your role working on The Nightmare Before Christmas?
So I was one of, several animators. There were about, I don't know the exact number, 12 or 15 to start with. And I worked on the film for almost 2 years. And I knew Henry Selick, the director.
Hmm.
I had worked with him previously on some commercials for MTV and also Pillsbury Doughboy commercials. But Nightmare Before Christmas was my first feature film. So it was the first feature film for a lot of us. A lot of us came up from the Gumby TV series in 1987, 88. Art Clokey hired a lot of us, and that was our first job. So a lot of the animators from that show, you know, started working with Henry on his smaller projects, and then were brought in for Nightmare Before Christmas, and I was one of them.
Right. I mean, Henry, as we know, has directed James and the Giant Peach, Caroline, and I always remember when first 5, 7 years after Nightmare Before Christmas, I always thought Tim Burton directed it because they
Yeah,
marketed it as Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas, and this was like I think right after Batman Returns, he produced a project, if my memory serves me right. And before that, it was Batman, and before that, it was Beetlejuice. And there was a lot of similarities I found. Now I noticed it now in terms of certain characters and certain style that reminded me of Beetlejuice quite a bit. Obviously, it's a similar, the whole concept of dark and death and Christmas and scary and all that stuff. I really, yeah, I really resonated with it in many, many levels. And, I am the Pumpkin King. What a great line.
I got to animate that line actually.
Did you?
Yeah, yeah. At the near the end of the film, where he crashes into the cemetery and he's unconscious in the arms of this angel, and his dog Zero comes in and wakes him up,
Yeah.
brings his jaw, puts him back together. He wakes up, he starts singing. Yeah, I read that in the script initially, and it was my favorite part in the film. And I asked Henry if I could animate it. So, yeah, he gave me the. I spent 6 months animating the entire sequence, and then he jumps off the angel, starts running around the cemetery, rips off the clothes, and says, "I am the Pumpkin King." So I got to animate that line.
That is so cool. It is obviously it became very popular after the film became, came out. It became one of those lines
Hmm.
that "May the Force be with you" or "Welcome to Jurassic Park." But when you're reading the script and you hadn't obviously seen anything, you've envisioned it. Do you remember? And I know it's been a long time. What was it about that kind of motivated you to ask Henry, like, can I do this? Was there some sort of a connection and resonance that you felt with that line and that scenes, personally?
Yeah, I mean, Henry came to me like probably 8 months before I got the script, and brought a maquette of Jack, and Eric Layton was with him, the animation supervisor, and they asked me to work on the film. And I said, "Is there a script?" And I said, "Oh no, there's not a script yet." There were songs. They were writing the songs, and that's basically what they had. They had a treatment, maybe like a page and a half outline or a
Mm.
short version. It didn't have any of the main characters in it, such as Sally. It had Jack stealing Christmas. That was the general idea. And then, yeah, so I read that, but I really wanted to read the script. So when they finally got me the script 8 months later, I was able to, really soak it in, and I really gravitated towards the scene where I was talking about the poor Jack sequence. And this is where Jack turns around and he kind of wakes up. He realizes, wait, I'm not Santa Claus. I don't need to do this. And then he realizes who he really is, the Pumpkin King. So yeah, that resonated with me personally. I was going through a lot of personal things around that time anyway. I mean, I don't know how detailed you want to get on this podcast, but
Hey, if you want to get detailed, you're more than welcome to. I don't want to push anything that's personal, but if you want to, go for it.
I mean, I was going through. I was involved with a church, and I was going through this. They were trying. I went through a program trying to change my sexuality, trying to be straight and go from gay to straight. And that was back in 1990. So I was trying to do a similar thing. I was trying to be something I wasn't, but I really wanted to. I really put everything into it. But after that program, I realized, no, I'm going to embrace who I am. And, but I had to go through that whole thing, just like Jack. I had to go through this whole thing to make sure that, just to prove to myself that basically it was okay. It was okay to be gay. It was okay to embrace it and to move on from there. And so that's why when I read that, I just thought this is where I'm at in my life, or I was in my life, or it was a process. It was around that same time though. It was like just a year or two before that. So yeah, I definitely connected with Jack on that level.
So thank you so much for sharing that, first of all. I know personal things are very difficult to share, especially for the world to hear and see. But when you approached Henry to do that scene, did you tell him the reason at the time, or it may have been a little bit difficult at the time?
I didn't tell, no, I didn't tell anybody.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, maybe a couple of friends, but no, it was pretty personal, and I didn't really talk about it for a few years after that. But yeah, no, nobody knew at the time.
Right. Gotcha. No, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Sure.
I, I, I can, my conversations are sort of all over the place because I'm excited about films. And so please just kind of go along with that. I just want to make sure that I
Okay,
cover all the points.
sure.
For me, stop motion came, I began understanding stop motion, I think, when Chicken Run came out, which was
Hmm.
the year 2000 by DreamWorks. And I
Hmm.
did not know what stop motion was until after that. But I didn't know Nightmare Before Christmas, James and the Giant Peach were stop motion. I
Hmm.
had no idea. So after that, when I realized that what stop motion is and the amount of time and effort that goes into it, you change the appreciation of that completely to another level. You take it to the next level. What was it for you in life that attracted you to stop motion versus at the time 2D or the beginning of 3D animation?
Yeah, I started animating when I was a kid. I was 11 years old. I grew up in Michigan, Flint, Michigan, and I was drawn to the arts. I was drawn to cartoons, like a lot of kids are. And I created my own little cast of characters, and I would write stories. I would make comic books. And the next step was like, how do I bring these characters to life? So I actually found a book in the library. So this is back in the 70s. There's no internet. There are hardly any books. But I found two books. One was a book about Ray Harryhausen and
Mm,
all his amazing creatures. And there wasn't a lot of like how to information, but there was enough to inspire me. But I did find another book, and it was about kids making their own movies. So using clay or cutout animation, making their own puppets. Very simple, but stuff that I knew I could do. So I knew I needed a camera. I knew I needed a tripod. I needed to get some lights, but it was really basic. I was able to get a Super 8 movie camera. My parents got me one when I was 11 for Christmas,
right.
and then I just took off. And so I started experimenting. I started experimenting with toys and clay and cutout animation. I thought maybe I could draw everything, like 2D animation on cell animation. It's called on acetate. I experimented with that, but it's a lot of drawing, so I kept coming back to stop motion. And the older I got, and I saw more films, King Kong was a big influence as well. The 1933 version of King Kong, 'cause it's stop motion and live action and all the tricks they used in that as well, with the rear projection, the front projection, the
Mm.
multiple exposures, to comp the humans in with the puppets and the miniature sets. And we did so much of that same kind of thing in Nightmare Before Christmas, actually, which made Nightmare kind of stand it kind of stands alone. All the stuff we do today, there's a lot of digital, there's a lot of blue screen, there's a lot of rig removal and CG stuff added, but Nightmare is kind of pure in that way. It's got it utilizes all those old tricks. So I was really glad I was able to work on that film to have the chance to try front projection or these beam splitters. Do you know what that is? Where you actually have a like a half silvered mirror in front of the lens, and so off to the side you can have like a ghost flying around,
Oh, I
and it
see.
just
Okay.
yeah. So that's one of the tricks we use to have make it look like Zero was in the frame with Jack, but also transparent. We would do things like that, or we would let's see, what else did we do? There's just like all these old tricks, and so I was really I gravitated towards that too as well, like working in a miniature world on a stage with a crew. Yeah, so I think that's why I chose stop motion over everything else. And even today, or even I did try working on the computer for a while. I went to Pixar for 2.5 years. I worked at Tippett Studio as well on the computer, and I thought I'd give it a try. And I learned it. I learned how to do it, but it didn't have the same pull that stop motion has for me. I got pulled back into it and just missed it. And yeah, I'm still still working in stop motion today.
Stop motion, I'm a huge animation fan. I always have been. Growing up in the 80s with Heckle and Jekyll. I don't know if you remember Heckle
Oh
and
yeah,
Jekyll. Yeah. And Tom and Jerry, Bugs Bunny, Mickey Mouse, and
yeah.
all that stuff. And I remember watching Watership Down at the age of 12, which was a pretty
Oh yeah.
violent pretty violent
Yes.
film, but it's a great piece of cinema. But there's
Hmm.
something about stop motion that I really enjoy watching because, in the back of my mind as an audience, I know the amount of effort that goes into, yes, but at the same time, there's that texture that you feel on the celluloid that you can experience the connection with the characters. You don't necessarily get that all the time in 2D and 3D films. You do get them sometime, but not all the time. But with stop motion, at least for me, I've gotten it all the time. Whether it's Chicken Run, James the Giant Peach, Corpse's Bride, Nightmare Before Christmas. I mean, there's so many films, and it's just there's some, and it's kind of sad that stop motion is not as popular. I mean, it is, but studios don't really
Right.
want to back that up as much, right? Because of financial reasons. I hope it revives because it's one of the most beautiful mediums that we can experience as an audience member.
Yeah, they don't tend to do huge box office, so
Yeah,
I think studios. That's the main reason they shy away from it.
of course. It's all about the business, right?
Yeah,
So,
but thankfully, some directors insist on it. Guillermo del Toro with
yeah.
Pinocchio and Wes Anderson, Tim Burton, Henry Selick. They stick with it and they push it. They've really helped to push it further. So I'm really grateful. Definitely grateful for Tim coming along and wanting to do Nightmare in stop motion. And he was definitely involved on the film, but he wasn't really at the studio very much. He would pop in once in a while. I think I only saw him once myself because I was animating, but he was working on Ed Wood and Batman Returns during the entire time we were working on Nightmare.
Yeah, I think Ed Wood is one of my favorite films of his, just because the
Yeah, me
story of it.
too.
I love the fact that how this the world's worst filmmaker, it's got such confidence to be the most amazing one. But I'm glad you brought Tim Burton up. So, he, as a producer, from a marketing standpoint, his name is attached to the film. But there is just something about, and nothing to take away from Henry, right? Henry has his own vision in the film for sure. But that darkness and that feeling of death and sadness and dark humor and dark tones certainly is, in my view, the domain of Tim Burton for the longest time. That's pretty much what he has done throughout the years. Well, how was that sort of translated to, Henry's vision, or was Henry sort of kind of taking it into his own direction? I would love to know if there's something that you know about that, in how that was tackled.
Yeah, that's hard to answer for Henry. I mean, Henry definitely credits, Tim with the idea and the design and the story. But Henry was there every day making the decisions on, how we were going to tell the story and, the storyboards, everything. So, he was there day to day. So I don't know. I don't really know how to answer that exactly.
Maybe I didn't ask the question right. Maybe I think what I'm trying to sort of understand is that was, and I think it's evident. It's definitely evident, but a lot of people, including myself, always have always had this misconception that it's Tim Burton's film, just because again, that's the way it was marketed, right?
Right.
And for Henry to be able to have his own, when you were working with him in on the film, let me rephrase that. Like his vision of how he wanted to tackle it. If you can share maybe a story or two from maybe working on a scene or just a general meeting that you guys may have had, what was that like working with Henry in translating his vision that he had for Nightmare Before Christmas?
I mean, animators would work with Henry directly, like in editorial. We would go in there, we would shoot a test on on the stage, basically block the shot out, bring it back to Henry, and he'd go through everything. We'd take notes. I mean, he definitely had his ideas about how the scene was going to play out and each shot. So, just for example, the Poor Jack sequence, I uh, took back then, a VHS video camera
Mm.
and acted the entire sequence out. And we went through the whole thing, picking out different poses, that he liked, that he thought would work, in the sequence. And he also decided to the the camera goes around the angel, so it's a circular path, slow, because otherwise it's just kind of a very there's not much going on. It's just Jack singing. So they wanted to make it more dynamic by having this slow camera move. So those are the kinds of decisions I think that Henry would make, along with Pete Kazacic, who was the DP, to try to make the film more dynamic. There's a lot of motion control, a lot of camera movement in this film. So I think it's just those kinds of decisions. Henry knows stop motion so well, and that's why he was chosen to be the director. So all those little details. Yeah, I hope that
Got it.
answered your
No, no,
question.
it does. It does. And
Okay.
my apologies. I wasn't trying to ask, what Henry felt of Tim Burton. I just probably paraphrased that question wrong. But moving on to the next part, there's always it's a long and tedious process. It's like a couple of years, stop motion, essentially,
Yeah.
plus the planning. So, if there was a particular scene that you worked on that you had the most challenge on, working from a technical standpoint or story, if you remember about how you went about dealing with it, or you and your team, and maybe Henry collaborating with each other.
I think the most challenging shots were the beginning because I was trying to figure out who the characters were, and they gave me a few shots with Jack in the beginning, and I didn't know the character. I didn't know how to move him. I didn't know. I wasn't experienced animating him, and over time you get to learn. You learn like what poses look best, like, and that's the main thing. Like you find the character, and it takes a bit of time to find the character. When I started the film, they gave me a shot with Jack looking through the window. The song "What's This?" He's peeking in through the window, looking at the elves and everyone celebrating Christmas. And they gave me this shot, and I didn't have any time to test it or anything. They just said, "Just shoot it. It's real simple." So I shot it a couple of times, and they picked one to put in the movie. And then they gave me these other shots with Jack, like walking down the hill, and pretty challenging. This
Yeah.
puppet is 17 inches tall. I never walked him before. There was no time to test ahead of time, like a full walk test. So I was kind of learning as I was going. So I think in the beginning, on any film, the most challenging shots can be the very beginning because the first shots, because you don't have that confidence built in yet, the experience with the character. On projects after that, like on Coraline and Corpse Bride, I was the animation supervisor on those, and we built in time for the animators to actually have a couple of weeks before they even had to shoot any real shots, just to test the puppets. So I could tell, and the director could tell, like which characters they might excel in, just so they have some kind of experience with it before they actually shoot some real shots. But as far as challenging shots themselves, probably in Poor Jack, Jack's costume is all torn, and there's all these pieces hanging. And all those little pieces had to be animated by hand. So I was moving Jack, and then I would have these pieces of fabric reacting to his movement. So if an suddenly moves out, then those pieces have to react to that. If he jumps off, they have to react. So it was a lot of overlapping animation. So I got into a groove with that, but at first it was like, okay, how do I do this? It's a lot to animate. He had like 20 pieces hanging off of him. So I think probably the first couple shots in that was a challenge. But Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Some shots can be super complex. You can have like 25 characters in a shot, and that's its own level of complexity too.
yeah. No, it's um, it takes. I mean, even Jack, like the way his design is, he's so skinny, right? And I'm
Hmm.
sure you guys had multiple versions of him because things probably went wrong many, many times, especially in the beginning and depending on the scene of the film.
Yeah, we had different scales as well. He was 17 inches tall. There was a half scale version of him for some of the wider shots, like when he's on this in his sleigh with the reindeer. There was a half scale
Yeah.
puppet built for that. He had multiple heads that would just pop off. The entire head would come off, and a different expression. You could put a new one on, different eye expression, different mouth expression. We had different kits for that, and they would just kind of lock in with a magnet. So, but yeah, he was very spindly. He had an amazing armature, tiny, tiny ankle joints, held the entire thing together. Yeah, he was definitely at that point. That was the tallest puppet I had ever animated.
You know,
Yeah.
when I was watching it this morning again, the scene came and I remember it from the trailer, and it's such a, if I want to use the word historical scene, you know, where
Hmm.
when the first time he goes down the chimney and he gives the Christmas gift to this boy,
Yeah.
and the parents ask, "What did you get him? What did he get you?" And he just, takes, and the look on his face and the camera angle. I mean, it just gets you all the time, and then anytime you, and that the whole montage of the kids getting the presents, it's kind of, mean thing to say, but you actually enjoy them getting all these
Yeah.
terrible presents because you're having a good time and you're laughing. I thought that was, it's such a weird thing that how that scene plays, and you don't, obviously music has to do with it. There's the way they scream, the execution. It's just a funny scene.
Yeah. This kind of the whole movie's kind of building to that moment too, because they're preparing for Christmas and they're making all the toys, and now here comes the delivery to the real world, and that's the reaction that they're, they're not happy with their presents, and they shoot them out of the sky.
Yeah. Do you remember when the film was done and whether it was an earlier screening, a premiere, a test screening, or just watching it with your friends or family in a public viewing, the
Hmm.
reaction that people had and how that sort of
Hmm.
had an impact on you as a human being, as an animator, plus kind of connecting the story that you told earlier about the church and all that.
Um, so, we had the crew screening, the wrap party in San Francisco. That was amazing. And I think the film opened in New York and LA first. I think like a week ahead of, its national release. So
Mm,
I went down to LA. I went to the El Capitan to see it. And
nice.
my sister was with me and my brother. So the three of us went to see it. We sat, I think we were in the back row. The whole place was packed. And that was an exciting moment for me, being able to watch the film with my siblings, my first film I'd ever worked on, and my brother and my sister, who I had put in my films because I'd experimented with live action when I was a kid too. So it was kind of fun to go to the movie with them. So that was a pretty special moment. And then just like 2 weeks ago, we had a screening here in Portland at the Hollywood Theater, and it was a sold out show. So people still love this movie. And I did a Q&A afterwards. But it's amazing to me that this film has endured, and it keeps enduring. It's a classic. Every Christmas it comes up again. There's Nightmare Before Christmas events and screenings, and Disneyland with the Haunted Mansion
Yeah.
holiday that they do, and merchandising everywhere. Didn't expect any of this. So it's a constant reminder of how popular film is and how it has touched people over the years. So it feels good to
Yeah.
be part of something like that.
Which surprises me, and not that I want to see it, but considering how Hollywood works and Disney works, there's always a
Right.
sequel, right?
Yeah, right.
And they never made one. Was there ever a chat ever that you heard, like even down the road, way after the film was released?
I don't know if anything legitimate, but I've heard, yeah, over the years I've heard, people talk about having a sequel but then what would that sequel be?
Exactly. But
So
yeah,
I
yeah,
know
which
there
is
have
why I
been,
said,
there's like books that have been written. I've never read any of these books, but I've read about there was something about Sally. The fans, they want to know what happens with the characters. But as far as a feature film,
yeah, no, I
not
wouldn't want
yet.
to see it. I honestly would not want to see it. It's similarly E.T. Like, there was a book written E.T. and the Green Planet or something along those lines, and uh, Spielberg never wants to make a sequel because I think this whole thing about it you said is people want to know what happened to Sally. I mean, I feel as much as I would love to know, the better
Hmm.
part of me would want not to know what happened, use my imagination, and that's it, leave it at that.
Yeah, there's something nice about that, isn't there? Just kind of leave it alone. Just
Yeah,
it is.
yeah,
This is it. This is all you're gonna get.
100%. I didn't realize you were in Portland. It's one of my favorite cities, man. I love
Oh,
Portland. I've been there
nice.
a couple of times and absolutely love it. Goonies was shot there in Astoria, of course, and that's another
Yep.
reason, but a beautiful place. Just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, yeah. It's now my home. I was living in California for 20 years or so.
Yeah.
That's where we did Nightmare and James and Monkey Bone and Pixar's down there. But when Henry got Coraline with Leica up here, I
Yeah.
moved up here. I worked on Paranorman after that, and I left for a while. I went to Montreal to work on The Little Prince with Mark Osborne, and after that, uh, Wendell and Wild brought me back up here to Portland. So I worked on that for a few years, and then Pinocchio, and I'm here. So
Well, you didn't go much far from where I am. I'm in Toronto, so 7-hour drive. But just to let you know, one
nice.
of my earlier guests were the two directors of Kung Fu Panda, one of them being Mark
Mark,
Osborne. Yeah,
nice. All
yeah,
right. Yeah,
yeah.
he's a great guy.
That,
Really
yeah,
enjoyed working with him.
he's a fun guy to talk to. Uh, what's cooking for you now? If there's a project that you are able to talk about that you wanted to share with the audience.
Yeah, it's been pretty quiet the last couple of years, so just a few small projects. And last year, I worked on a short film called The Littles with director, writer Andrew Duplessis. And he just contacted me. Didn't know him, and he contacted me online, and we started talking about creating a short film. It was live action, and he needed a few shots, some animated shots in stop motion. So I spent about 3 months between getting the puppets ready, uh, shooting some tests, and then shooting a few animated shots. So that film was wrapped back in January this year, and it is currently making its rounds in the festival circuit. But it also recently was announced that it was picked up for development by Paramount. So for a feature. So there's a
Mm.
chance that I'll be working on that if the stars align and I'm not working on something else at the time. I'd really like to work on this project, and I do love the idea of working on another project in where there's live action integrated with stop motion integrated with live action. I've always liked the idea of it. Probably goes back to King Kong and Ray Harryhausen's films.
Yeah, yeah. That would
So
be really cool to
th
see.
Yeah, so that's out there. But other than that, I don't have anything lined up currently.
Yeah, it's a very weird time in the industry, right? I mean, there's
Mm,
been the strikes after strikes, COVID, AI, if you want to include that in the whole list and stuff, and
yeah.
expensive production costs in California. So it's a very bizarre time. I wonder, I would love to know, you being an animator and you see all this
Mm,
AI stuff popping out everywhere.
yeah.
Not that, I mean, even in live action, I'm in live action world, so even in that, but your take, I probably have shifted my view in the last 4 or 5 months about
Mm.
AI, but I would love to know what you think if it's something that is going to have massive implications on VFX or animation for that matter.
Gosh, it's really hard to know, really, because it is just sort of crept up so quickly and gotten so good so fast. So it's definitely going to impact everybody in one way or another. Not just in the film business, just
Everywhere, yeah.
all the jobs out there. And there's probably some a mixture of good and bad. But I also think as far as filmmaking, I think the audience they don't like to keep looking at the same kinds of things. So that's why I think stop motion kind of stands out. Although they can try to replicate it in AI as well if they I've
Yeah,
seen some things out there, but I don't think directors really want to work with that. I think they want to work with real, we're all actors, the animators are actors, and it's a performance and it's collaborating with people on a set. I think the experience of making a film, that's why I do it. I don't really do it to sit there and watch the films I work on. I enjoy making them.
of
And I
course.
have lots of friends like that. They all want to make these cool projects. And I tend to work with a lot of the same people over the years. I may not see somebody for 5 years and then they pop up on the movie I'm working on. So it's a very small, tight-knit group when you think about it, especially stop motion.
Yeah. I think, it's funny because I've had a little bit of shift in my view on AI. I still feel it's going to change a lot of things it already has.
Yeah.
Just to kind of, I remember the very first year when ChatGPT came out, transcribing business went out the window. Like, people who did closed captioning and stuff. Now you can just
Yeah.
do a click of a button in a software and boom, you got your
Yeah.
entire thing closed caption. But I also feel that I think Ben Affleck is something that I agree with. He said that we're going to be living in a place where people would be able to license, let's say, Ben Affleck avatar and Matt Damon avatar and make their own film, and then the actors get, royalties from that. But that's just going to be a small fraction of work that is going to serve a certain demographic, like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
call it social media or whatnot. And then the
Yeah.
films will continue to make. I think that AI will certainly be used as tools in films, 100%. I use it, but to completely
Sure.
replace, I used to think that maybe 6 months ago. I don't see that now because, like you said, it's just not the same. I don't think that story factor will ever get replaced. That's just my way of thinking based on what I've seen.
Yeah, it's a very interesting time, and it is changing things, and it could be a helpful tool for sure.
Oh,
And
sure,
I mean,
100%.
yeah, like rig removal, all the tedious stuff that nobody really wants to do. Just feed it in there, and it'll clean everything up. Fine. I'm fine with that kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. I remember my first doc that I directed. I had hired somebody to transcribe all the interviews. It was this thick of a folder. It took 5 months and
Wow.
probably paid a couple of grand. This was like 10 years ago. And to do that right now is like you don't even need to, and it doesn't even take that long. So it's just times have changed so much, right? So
Can you imagine actually doing it? Like I tried to sit down and do it once, and it was I could it was
it's
so
too much.
tedious.
It is so tedious. It is. It is. But kudos to those who used to do it. But now,
Yeah, for
sadly,
sure.
they're not doing it, and the AI is doing it.
Yeah. Well,
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Anthony. I really appreciate your time, man. I know we kind of went segues to something else, but before I just wrap up one little time, I just want to go back to Nightmare Before Christmas. I,
hmm
what aside, you talked about your personal experience and it's your
hmm
connection with. If there was one thing that you could take away from Nightmare Before Christmas, whether it's professional or personal, what would that be that you learned something from that film, both at a personal and professional level?
Mm. Uh, uh, this is tough. You have to cut this part out because I can't think of anything right away.
It's
Um,
okay. Take your time. I'll take it out.
okay, yeah. Well, I think on this film, um, and because of all the things I was going through personally, I mean, that's probably one of the reasons I didn't say yes to the film at first until I got the script because I still had one foot in the church. I was still hanging on to a little bit of it there. And when I said yes to the film, when I got the project, I was starting to let go of that life in the church and embracing my life in the film business and putting all my energy into this film, like everything I had, all my creative energy, everything. I hadn't fully embraced my sexuality yet, but I was starting to leave that belief system, which is scary when you're raised that way and that's all you know, and you're stepping out away from it. But I knew I was stepping into something that I really, really believed in as well. I believe in collaborating with friends, doing animation, creating art. That's such a big part of my life and so important to me. And so that's something I knew that was true for myself. So I was leaving something that I was taught to transition into something I knew that I was born to do. And then from there, over the next, I'd say 2 or 3 years, I started to embrace my sexuality and accept it completely. So Nightmare Before Christmas was sort of the bridge, in my life personally, from that transition from an old belief system into embracing, who I was, who I am. So,
Fair enough. Yeah. I
yeah.
truly believe that whether we are audience members or the people who work on the film, writers, directors, even a spot boy, whatever he or she may be, we always pick on these films. So like, I mean, sometimes it's obviously, money. You have to pay the rent. But
Yeah.
most of the time, if not all the time, there's always a layer of something that is attracting you towards this project, something that you
Hmm.
connect to. Some people are able to figure out what that connection is. Some people don't, and they probably don't for another 10, 15 years. But there's always a reason we all become part of a film or a project because it
Hmm.
somehow resonates with us at a very personal level. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Anthony. I appreciate your time, man. Wishing you the best of the holidays. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year if you celebrate it. And we'll talk in the new year with the Corpse's Bride.
Great. Great. Yeah. Happy holidays. I'll see you
Thank you.
soon.
All
All right.
right. Take care. Bye.
All right. You too. Bye.